Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for November 27th, 2024. Coming up, Kevin Durant is back. Looks pretty good. The Suns missed him big time. We got a tale of the Twin Cities, and last night it was the worst of times. So we got Jon Krawczynski in here, and Zena and I are going to talk about whether or not the Pelicans should blow it up. Yes, they need to just tank. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Zena. Ooh, it was good to see Kevin Durant last night. Zena, how about
Absolutely.
that?
He looked so good.
They looked like us and the Suns, right? We love to see them. We were just woo. No Giannis for the Bucks, so I was worried we were going to have a dud of a night. But KD back for the Suns, and Zena, immediately everything falls into place. Him and Bradley Beal back on the court. They've got their full starting unit out there for only like the fourth time all year.
Yep.
And what do you know? They blow out the Lakers 127-100. The three guys, Booker plays the most minutes, plays 34 minutes. I think only 27 for Beal, 30 for KD. So just a nice, easy night for everybody, which is kind of what we want for the Suns, right? Like, this is a team that's built for the playoffs. They should be crushing teams like the Lakers that can't really score.
That's exactly what you want, is your big three being able to come in, handle business, and then sit down in the fourth quarter and allow the young guys to cook. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, this is probably the best iteration of a big three living like right now in the league. You know what I mean? Like there's few teams that have been able to bring in a new talent, a big name talent, and work it out. And the funny thing is, their move actually had nothing to do with the big three that was already there. It was about Tyus Jones coming in and becoming the thread between the three of them and being able to have him be the floor setter with this team. And not to put anything away from the big three, but there's something to be said about their rookies too. Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro have been so solid of presences, and they play so much older than they are, just being responsible with the ball and making the right decision. And I'm sure that is a byproduct of being around these three superstars in Beal, Booker, and Durant.
Well, they got big minutes out of Ighodaro filling in when Nurkic was kind of banged up and in foul trouble. And Ryan Dunn has just been a good story all year long. Nurkic, hit a three, another three made by use of Nurkic in this game. I think we were contractually obligated to point out every single time he makes one because it was going to be rare. But on the other hand, the Lakers, JJ Redick made history in the game, or after the game, I guess you could say, becoming the first Lakers coach in their history to lose an NBA Cup game. Zena.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Darvin Ham undefeated on the way to the NBA Cup championship.
I did not know that.
There you go. Lakers not eliminated yet. They still have a chance to make it to the elimination round. So it's still early for the Lakers. But, here's the issue for the Lakers. They struggled to score. They lost this game really like the third quarter. It got out of hand. They lose that quarter 36-18. And Zena, it's not hard to, when you look up and down the box score, even to just peep at the box score and say, well, Cam Reddish gives you 0 points. Rui gives you 7.
Yep.
And that's in your starting lineup. And Cam, he's in there for defense, but you just don't have enough offense to be able to have a defensive specialist out there.
The problem that the Lakers are facing right now is there's so much give and take with so many different players. With Cam Reddish, the give is obviously good defense. You can put him on your biggest assignment and you can make sure that he can handle that. However, he takes away offensive production. He does not provide you anything in terms of a boost. Now, who could you replace him with? Dalton Connect. He can give you those additional buckets. He can give you that lift. He can give you a lob play out of sideline, out of bounds play, like crazy bucket, like hops. However, what does he take? Defense. He
gives that too. He's given to everyone. Dalton Connect's just a giver. But look, he spaces the floor. He makes things easier for Anthony Davis. And look, my thing is this. Rui Hachimura and Cam Reddish, playing the two of them together is a problem. With Rui, I understand it. He's a big body. He's a good rebounder. He hits the mid-ranger, but you can't have two guys that will not stretch the floor. Austin Reeves has had a great season. D'Angelo Russell has been excellent outside of making shots since moving to the bench. to me, I think, and those shots are going to fall. That dude heats up as the season goes on. I think a move for Dalton Knecht into the lineup for one of Cam Reddish or Rui. I think you just got to choose one. I don't hate the idea of Rui coming off the bench. And I don't want to compare him to Jonathan Kuminga because they're different players, but could have a similar role where he's this scoring guy off the bench when you don't have LeBron out there and maybe buy you some time, with no Anthony Davis.
Now, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know that Rui Hachimura coming off the bench in previous years for the Lakers has been a burst of energy. He has been a burst of defense and offense. He can hit that corner three, give the Lakers a lift, especially as they're, in transition, wanting to get a quick bucket early in the shot clock. Now, one thing about D'Angelo Russell, he's been excellent in general. Against the Phoenix Suns tonight, not good.
Yeah, well, okay. Okay.
Let's just be
he's going to have some stinkers here or there. Let's swing it to the Bucks. Number one, the court in the Miami Heat arena for the NBA Cup is legal pad yellow. And I just do not get it. We just cannot do this. That is an awful
There's
color.
Like 5
get rid of the yellow,
courts.
guys. We got to get rid of the yellow. That's the first note in my notes from the game, Zena. My second note, no Giannis, no Chris Middleton. He's not back yet, but we did get the news that he's playing 5-on-5, so he's going to hopefully be back soon.
Yep.
We've been talking about that for a couple weeks now, that it's up to him, so hopefully he's back soon. But the Bucks did get a win over the Miami Heat, thanks to Damian Lillard's 37 points. And look, they really did. They came out like gangbusters, and they held off the Miami Heat, who came back and made this a real game. But the Bucks, they showed some stuff. I thought showed some toughness. I think Damian Lillard making shots helps, rise a lot of tides, right? But I think AJ Green and Andre Jackson have shown things when Damian Lillard was out, when now Giannis out. Just those guys need to play more. Good stuff happens for the Bucks when those guys are playing.
When Dame Lillard was hot early on in the game, there wasn't a lot of movement that the rest of the cast had to do. They were allowing Dame Lillard to cook. And for that reason, their energy was conserved. When you saw things slow down for Dame Lillard and the Bucks had to do more work to get themselves open, to get themselves running in transition and defending as well the Miami Heat, who got hot, especially in that third quarter, you saw them get fatigued. And who were their saving grace? It was AJ Green hitting those 3-pointers and Andre Jackson Jr. just being a crazy defender and just an active body all across the court. So yes, the youth have to play for the Bucks, especially as they get down in time.
Yeah, they stand out because the Bucks, they just need athletes out there, and those guys are going to make mistakes. They made mistakes in this game, but every single game, especially Andre Jackson, when he's out there and pick and roll with Damian Lillard as the roll man, and they throw the double at Dame and he has to make a decision. He did a pretty good job of making the decision on the short roll, finding the shooter. So stuff to look. I think the Bucks have some promising stuff coming there. They've still got some things they got to figure out, but not too bad considering, especially no Giannis. Guys, stick around. We got Jon Krawczynski to break down the bad vibes with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Zena, it's not looking good. The NBA Daily Curse continues. Jon Krawczynski's on the show, so you know that the Timberwolves must have lost last night. That one, John, it was a little bit of a heartbreaker. They fought back to get into the game. They made it to overtime. But at the end of the day, Alperen Sengun said that Rudy Gobert was too small, and the Rockets get the win. But I want to start with the positive here for the Wolves, because every time I get you on the show, it's just, hey, the vibes are bad. Ooh, what's going on with the defense? But, with Mike Conley out, we've gotten a chance to see rookie Rob Dillingham. And, this is one of probably, I think it was his best game. He was giving them energy where they just didn't have it. And I think if there's one positive takeaway from this recent stretch with the Wolves, it's got to be him, right?
Yeah, for sure, Dave. When you look at how this season started, first of all, they trade up or into the draft to number 8 overall to grab Rob Dillingham. And you're thinking, hey, he's going to play, after, with giving Mike Conley some backup minutes there. But the real challenge for a 19-year-old, generally when you're drafted 8th overall, you're going to a team that's not very good, and you can kind of just get thrown out there and play. But he was coming to a Western Conference finalist that feels like they can get back there or further when they get everything figured out here. And so his minutes were really limited early in the season. Like, he just was not getting rotation minutes. And because Chris Finch was going more with the veterans, trying to get some cohesion with this new look group. And Rob Dillingham was out of the rotation. Now, the last couple of games, as the minutes have opened up with Connolly out, he has really come in, and you can see he just brings a totally different dimension to this team. I mean, his energy, his dynamic cutting ability, his handle, all of that stuff is big for them. And really what it says right now is you just have to find minutes for him on the floor. Dante DiVincenzo is really struggling. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's not a real point guard. So even when Conley is healthy, and I think he'll be back fairly soon, I still think you got to play this kid, man, because he just is electric out there.
Makes plays. Well, he had that big offensive rebound and wound up with the putback that actually put him in position to get into overtime. And it's just, when everyone else was looking lazy and kind of tired out there, which has been a theme for them all year. Zena, we were talking about this while we were watching the game. Yeah. Like, the vibes have just been off for this team all season, and low energy.
For sure. It's funny, John, as you were talking about how Rob Dillingham has fit into this team, we know coming into this season, we weren't thinking he was going to get a lot of minutes. And I'm seeing a parallel with Jared McCain in Philadelphia, right? Just now having to step up. And you've seen what happens with more minutes with Jared McCain. Now, potentially with Dillingham, you might see the same thing. But yes, the vibes are bad. And Dillingham was a perfect foil to seeing how bad the vibes were. He was super excited in the end of the game, trying to get team vibes going, team play going. And yet there was a lot of ISO balls. There was a lot of disconnectedness in the huddles even. You saw Dillingham put his pound up. He wanted to get a nice little huddle to close out a timeout, and everybody walked right past them. Like, what are the vibes? You've been with this team. You've seen this team before the trade. What are the evolution of the vibes on this team?
Yeah, Zena, it's night and day. I mean, last year's team rode really overwhelming defense and really great chemistry deep into the playoffs. And you can just tell that with these new faces in here, with the slow start, everyone is holding the steering wheel really tight. And there is not the trust built up. There is not the familiarity built up. And so it's very similar to when Rudy Gobert came over from Utah in their first season. It took a long time.
That's a good
figure it out. Yeah. And so they didn't trust each other then. And it took a while for that to form. And I think right now they're having a hard time trusting each other as well. And so I think the lack of vibes is also giving kind of a reason for the lack of defense. Like, they are just not as intense on the perimeter as they have been in the past. And that's really hurting them time and again in these games.
Yeah, well, look, the vibes are off. I mean, part of it, though, is like they're actually missing more than just Karl Anthony Towns. Kyle Anderson was hugely important for this team, not only vibes-wise, and we're all going to swing back to the moment where he punches Rudy Gobert on the bench, right? But like,
Rudy punched him. So
Rudy punched him. Thank you for correcting me there. But Rudy punched him, right? But you need those sorts of personalities to keep guys going, and he was a steadying force for them on defense. And on offense, as a playmaker and a guy who could operate out of the high post. So, he's kind of been the lost guy for this team, in all the discourse. I think Jaden McDaniels is getting a little bit of a pass on the bad season he's having. We can talk about Randall all day, but the guy that they've been missing is really Kyle Anderson. They didn't find a guy who was going to replace him, high-level defender and connector on offense.
Yeah, you're right, Dave. I mean, I think one of the silver linings for me as I've watched this play out right now is last season and for several seasons, I was kind of more of a Cat guy. Like, I would tell him how important he was, and everyone's like, no, John, like, Ant's the guy. Like, you're missing out there. And that's, kind of really readily apparent what they missed there. But I was also a Kyle Anderson guy. Yes, he did not shoot it well last year. He shot it really poorly. But too many people were just looking at, he shot 14% from three, and so how could he possibly help? But what you saw from him last year he was Chris Finch's safety blanket. He can guard multiple positions, could go out there and could guard on the perimeter, could guard bigs at times. He was also a pseudo point guard, and they could really use him right now in that role as a veteran playmaker, director of traffic on offense, getting people shots, finding things, and they desperately miss that. And also, he's a Jersey guy. He could get a little salty and ornery when things weren't going well, and sometimes the team needs that. Some guy to stand in the middle of the locker room and say, knock this shit off, and get going. And that's what Kyle Anderson did sometimes. And so they are missing him on multiple fronts right now, just in his all of the different things that he brings to the table outside of, his poor 3-point shooting.
That's one of my favorite aspects of Kyle Anderson's game that often goes unnoticed, is that he was actually a point guard first and then grew. I love those type of players that have a handle all out of nowhere at a 6'9" frame. It's like, oh no, this was actually my job before I became a defensive specialist and a slow-mo down the paint fundamental type of player. But you just talked about this and you wrote about this, Jon, that Anthony Edwards, speaking of being a guy that's in the locker room, telling people to knock things out and figure it out, being the leader on this team, he said, we aren't playing hard enough. And in the games that they have been able to kind of get out a win, it's because they were playing hard enough to cover up the mistakes. How do you get them to play hard enough and play together? What is Chris Finch's task in front of him to get this team to trust each other?
Yeah, it's been I think a real point of exasperation for him this season, in something that he openly worried about before the season, is that I think there was concern that with a young core, now they have Rudy Gobert and they have Mike Conley as veteran dudes, but their core is young. Ant, Nasri, Jaden McDaniels, now Rob Dillingham. And that group made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. And I think there was concern that maybe they'd be slightly bored with the regular season. Maybe they would just assume that, hey, we're just going to get back to the playoffs, no problem. Everything is going to come easily and naturally for us. And that hasn't happened. And I think one of the things we all know what Anthony Edwards does and what he brings to the table, he's been terrific for them. But he has not been the defensive presence that he was last year. He has not been a tone setter at the start of games that they need from him. He is the number one guy now. Cat is gone. Julius Randle is what he is. He's a good player, but he's not, a 1B like Karl Anthony Towns was. So this is Anthony Edwards' team. He's still only 23. He's still figuring things out and how to be a leader in all of those things. But I do think they need a little bit more consistency in intensity, but especially on the defensive end from him against good teams and bad, to really just get everyone to to follow his lead.
Well, and you said, he needs to start quarters, start games better. He needs to close games defensively better than he has, because he looks tired down the stretch. And you're the number one guy. You're not allowed to be tired, right? Speaking of not tired, Krawczynski, not tired. Go and read him over at The Athletic. He's writing about the bad vibes today. So go and check that out. Stick around after the break. Zena and I are going to talk about the Pelicans and whether or not they need to just blow it up. All right, time for our mailbag segment. And Zena, the Pelicans have had a rough run of it. As we've talked about extensively, Zion Williamson going to be out probably a couple months. Brandon Ingram still on the team. No trade market, still no center there. But good news is DeJounte Murray coming back today. So maybe he helps turn things around. But we got a question here, and it's a Pelicans question from Big Grady Energy over on the website. Don't forget, we've got our posts over on the website. The link is in the description. Go and leave us your questions. Here's his question. Should the Pels pull the plug on this season? If so, how do they do it? CJ's playing and they're getting Murray soon, but now Ingram's out. Herb still hasn't been clear for contact, and who knows when Zion will be back. Do they just play this out and pull an quote unquote ethical tank? And that's where you try hard, but you don't have the guys. CJ might be untradeable, and we all know about the Ingram situation. Can they even make trades to get worse? Zena, this is sort of the conundrum that they're in. They do have their draft pick, in the coming draft, where everyone wants Cooper Flagg or, whoever the guy is that winds up being number one or in the top 5 there. So They could pull the plug, but how do they do it?
I think I'm a fan of the idea of pulling the plug, especially because they have that draft pick. I look at this situation, I think that, yes, a lot of people are forgetting just how impactful DeJounte Murray was with the Atlanta Hawks and what he can do in terms of floor setting for the New Orleans Pelicans, which is what they desperately need right now, especially considering they don't have all of their valuable pieces in place, like Zion not in place, Herb Jones not in place. They need someone to come in and kind of calm down the noise. DeJounte Murray is capable of that. But even with him back, he still doesn't have all the pieces to cook with. So play hard, finish out the year strong, and use your pick. Now, asking the question of how do they do it? I love this question because we often don't talk about what goes into tanking and how do you do it in a way that people aren't opening their eyes too big. And Brandon Ingram, I think, is the factor in all of this. Do you trade him at the deadline? What's his market like? What's he worth? What do you get back, et cetera? I say let it play out. I kind of look at it like how the Clippers handled their situation with Paul George. He ended up at the end of the year walking away. Yes, the Clippers got nothing back in return. But look, Norman Powell steps up in the midst of that gap that's left open by Paul George. And maybe we'll see that in one of their young talents being able to step up and fill the gap of a Brandon Ingram. But right now, what is there isn't working. And I don't know if they're going to have a market for Brandon Ingram. Let it fester. Let it play out.
Problem there is that if Brandon Ingram is on the team, he's too good. You got to move him. You got to figure out a way to move him. You got to get him off your team because he is too good if you're going to tank. Respect. I mean, he's just a good player and he can get a bucket. So, but he's a guy who can get a bucket. I think that the market is going to find him. I'm not sure what it is yet, but they'll figure that out.
I say not too much
Brooklyn
pressure
right now,
Pelicans.
they're trying to figure out a way to tank. There's a lot of teams out there that need to move some guys. And when you look at how close all these races are, especially in the West, the Pels need to get out of it now. So I'm kind of on the same page there. We also got a question, not a basketball question. It's a movie question. Zena, what is the best action movie of all time? Die Hard or Terminator 2?
Ooh, I am sad
I don't think it's either one of those either.
I've actually not seen any of those. No shame on me, but I haven't seen any of those.
They're old movies.
They're older movies. They are. But I wouldn't even say, even if I've heard of them, obviously. I know Die Hard, Bruce Willis, obviously amazing actors in both, but I'm a Training Day girl. That was one of the best performances by Denzel Washington. Also one of the most realistic action movies, in terms of the relationship between Alonzo and Jake. So I'm definitely a fan of that movie.
For me, it's whatever the newest Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie is, because that's the best one ever made. He always does a big stunt. I love how he sells it. And also Die Hard. That's a Christmas movie. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. Thank you guys for tuning in. For Zena, Keita, I am Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thank you guys for waking up with us.